Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Chrisalis. Join us for another relationship anarchy research conversation. Together we talk about balancing the responsibility of our interconnectedness, the importance of friendship, and the power of presence. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I am so delighted to have all of you pleasure activists from around the world tuning in for another episode each Wednesday. My name is Nicole. I am a sex and relationship psychotherapist with training in psychedelic integration therapy. And I am also the founder of the Pleasure Practice, supporting individuals in crafting, yes, fat cat, expansive sex lives and intimate relationships. Dear listener, fat cat, you want to say hello to everybody? Yeah, that's my cat, everyone. Hi. I am so excited to be bringing you this episode today. Every relationship anarchy episode is so special to me. It's such a joy to be continuing my research. It's such a joy that one of you, dear listeners, trust me to come on to the show and to share your wisdom with the practice. And each conversation, I feel, changes me and expands, and I see new perspective, and I get to hear so much feedback from all of you listeners who are growing with the podcast too and find each episode to be giving life and form to your own practice of relationship anarchy. And it's a reminder that there are so many of us moving through the world who are challenging the status quo of relationships, who are doing the best we can to really unlearn all of the unconscious power structures that are impacting our ability to love. And dear listener, please know that the door is always open for you. If you want to come onto the show and share your voice, share your practice of relationship anarchy, all of the details are linked in the show notes below. And this series is truly made by listeners like you who take up the call, who know how important relationship anarchy is and how much we need more free educational resources like this out in the world. So yeah, the door is open, and I look forward to speaking to you when the timing is right. All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure, you can explore my offerings and resources at modernanarchypodcast.com, linked in the show notes below. And I want to say the biggest thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. You are supporting the long-term sustainability of the podcast, keeping this content free and accessible for all people. So thank you. If you want to join the Patreon community, get exclusive access into my research and personal exploration, then you can head on over to patreon.com/modernanarchy, also linked in the show notes below. And with that, dear listener, please know that I'm sending you all my love, and let's tune in to today's episode. And the first question that I ask every guest on the show is, how would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
I've had some really pretentious labels that I've given myself for either blurbs on like gig events or dating profile bios.
Sure.
A label that I really like just now is Transcendental Anarchist.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, should we get into that? Start there?
Yeah, it can do.
Yeah, tell me, what does that label mean to you?
So transcendental anarchism was my way of bringing together all of the different format or like forms of anarchism or all the different spheres that anarchism can exist within. And the transcendental part is sort of like I like to think it sort of like elevates it into more of a spiritual type
Sure.
holistic approach. Because I consider myself a relationship anarchist. I consider myself a political anarchist. I was kind of batting around the phrase anarcho-spiritual to
Sure.
define my sort of spiritual beliefs as well.
Sure.
But I feel there's maybe an element of holistic anarchism where it's across all the spheres, which I think does separate it a bit from when it's just political anarchism or just relationship anarchism. I think it's all tied together
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And I feel when you do bring in these different aspects of life into it, it does elevate in some way. Like, it's kind of transcending a lot of the smaller concerns and arguments and disagreements and differences
Mm-hmm.
that are maybe present in the smaller forms of anarchism.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm sure we're going to get into all of that in our conversation today. And yeah, it's like, where do you draw that line of what is relationship anarchy versus what is not relationship anarchy? I think that's a pretty deep question, depending on how nerdy we want to get about it, because at the end of the day, it's all relationships, right? Like your relationship to spirituality, your relationship to the divine, right? And so it's like, where do we draw that line of what it is versus isn't? I mean, I can get nerdy on that. People have talked about relationships, yeah, to the planet, to their gender, to other people, right? So political systems, right? So it all starts to come together. So I'd be curious for you, how do you define relationship anarchy?
Relationship anarchy is bringing the principles of anarchism into the relational sphere, where it is to do with interpersonal relationships. And I think it's one really fundamental aspect of it is the kind of deconstruction of unjust hierarchies, while still understanding that moment to moment there is just natural hierarchies that arise, but to be able to be dynamic with that,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand that they're there, so then they can kind of be chosen rather than just accepted as the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one thing that really pulled me towards relationship anarchism when I first heard about it, other than I was already very into
Sure,
just
sure.
anything that has the word anarchism in it,
Of course.
or anarchy, I was the idea of not putting romantic relationships above friendships. Because especially for me, the romantic part of romantic relationships is nice,
Yeah.
but the real substance of it for me has always been the friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And the best relationships I've had, like the best romantic relationships I've had, have always had that fundamental friendship beforehand and then throughout as well, where day to day, hanging out, going on adventures, playing music together, juggling together,
Mm-hmm.
instead of having the baseline as romance and cuddling and kissing and sex.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, relationship anarchy, it wasn't about bringing down the importance of romance. It was
Sure.
about elevating the importance of friendships.
Yeah, so beautiful. And I feel like with that frame shift, right, to your life, you often feel such a big like opening of the chest to all the different forms of intimacy that exist in your world, right? It's not just looking at one person or even in a poly framework, two people or three people or wherever you hit your saturation with that. It's like, oh wow, I have all of these relationships and these are all beautiful people that I'm connected to in different ways and different proximities, right? And so you start to feel that level of intentionality and love across your whole community, which I feel like is very transformative.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I think it does come from a love of community. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it always felt sort of instinctual when I'd heard about relationship anarchy, and then I read I read half of the book Relationship Anarchy,
Sure.
um, and I will read the other half when
Yeah.
I stop getting distracted.
Well, there's an
Um,
episode with him coming out. It will be before
really,
your episode, yeah. So you can always
amazing.
get the in-person download over here too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, it was such a beautiful book to read and so validating.
Yeah.
But the thing that I hadn't really thought about before with relationship anarchy was the mutual aid and community building aspect of it,
Sure.
which it's such a fundamental part of political anarchism that why wouldn't it be with relationship anarchy as well?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to hear more about how you see mutual aid playing out in your relationships and your practice.
Oh, yeah, big question.
It is a big question. I think it's tied to your earlier discussion of non-hierarchy and all that sort of stuff. So we're gonna deep dive into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Um, Mutual aid side of relationship anarchy for me, I think part of it has been the sensitivity that has to come from working within a framework where there isn't those assumed hierarchies. Like within monogamy and within polyamory, there's very often agreements and vetoes and primary partners and things like that. And those things are built or they exist. I mean, they potentially contribute to as well very real human emotions like jealousy and insecurity and um, favoritism and things like that. And within, like, I've seen it a lot in kind of my local polyamorous community,
Sure.
especially, is that when people are technically allowed to do stuff, they often do it with less sensitivity because they're like,
Mm,
well, I'm allowed, it's within the agreement.
mm,
Whereas when you do remove those guardrails of things that you're allowed to do and things that you're not allowed to do, and all of the discussions that come from potentially like having to change those rules as the feelings change, it's about doing what feels like is best for the community and like the extended community, yourself, your friends, your partners, or however you kind of refer to them, their people, their home dynamics. Yeah, so bringing empathy and
yeah.
sensitivity into those interactions while still ideally being true to yourself and the
Yeah.
things that you're choosing for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, from a less relationshipy aspect, but just the help, help and support and holding space for people and understanding that we are human and we have these emotions that can be really, really all consuming and they're rarely rational. And being able to sit in that with people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. The personal is the political, right? So all of these interactions we're having in our personal lives directly contribute to the political change that we hope for in this world. And so, yeah, slowing down to be present with the people around us and to care and to show up for them. It's such a delicate dance between freedom and autonomy and community care, right? And those two things can often rub up against each other in expansion as you're doing this sort of relating, right? Like, I want to go do this, but then it might be causing really deep and difficult emotions for another person, right? Jealousy being one of them, grief, other stuff like that, right? And so, like, how do you navigate that level of following your pleasure, following your autonomy while balancing that with deep care for your community? There's no easy answer for that one. It feels like a very delicate case by case situation. But what does feel clear to me is finding the pleasure in showing up for yourself and showing up for other people. It's not just always following what you want, what you need, all of that. It's wow, like finding pleasure in giving, caring to the people that are around you. I also think it's really interesting when I first started practicing relationship anarchy, this concept of non-hierarchy made so much sense to me, right? people shouldn't have control over other people with veto powers, right? It's hurtful, all these other things. So it made so much sense to me when I was reading the books and sitting with it. And then as I was going through my practice, I kept thinking, great, okay, I have all these lovers around me, non-hierarchy. So I need to split my time. I need to split my energy. I need to divide it all equally. And as I got further into that, I was like, wait a second. So if I have, like 4 or 5, it's like, oh, 25% for the 4. Oh, only 25%. Shoot. Okay, wait, I have 5, 6. Okay, how do I do the math? It's like, wait a second. Okay, so we can't just say that it's all going to be equal across the board. That's not what non-hierarchical means, because at the end of the day, we're on a planet with, 8 billion people? No matter how you look at that situation, there's going to be some level of hierarchy/stratification of, at minimum, intimacy and proximity. I'm not close to 8 billion people, right? And so there's going to be some stratification for that. I remember I was talking to someone about relationship anarchy, and I was talking about this dungeon scene that I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, okay, I have a couple of close people I'd love to like play with me, and then a couple other ones that I'd have watch. And they're like, that sounds like hierarchy. And I was like, if that's what hierarchy is, absolutely yes. Like, I have some people I feel very comfortable with touching my body, and other people I'm not, right? And it's like, it was interesting to have someone kind of like throw that at me, like, wow, sounds like you're practicing hierarchy. It's like, I'm not open to it. So it's really interesting. I think this word is very complex, and when we're on the internet and we're trying to find language for it, you can see people start to go back and forth and be a little vitriolic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was something that also appealed to me about relationship anarchy, was just hearing a sort of example of it. It's like you've got one friend that you live with and you share a bed with, but you don't necessarily have sex with them. And you've got one friend that you have lots of kinky sex with, and you've got another friend that you love going on adventures with and holding hands with and kissing, but nothing else. And
Yeah.
it fits the weirdness of humanity so well.
Mm-hmm.
Just like political anarchism as well.
Mm-hmm.
It allows for our nature and our preferences and lets it change as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And what a practice it is to deconstruct that within our unconscious, truly, like deep within our unconscious. These desires that we have are often so formed by the culture that we live in. I don't even know if I want to say often, as much as they are formed by the cultures that we live in. And so this act of deconstructing things like the relationship escalator, wow, right? Trying to, if you're not familiar with it, this concept that you go from meeting someone to dating, to exclusively dating, to living together, to having kids, to dying together, right? That's the typical rom-com arc. And I always talk about the intimacy escalator as another piece of that too, right? That attraction goes from attraction to touching to kissing to quote unquote foreplay to quote unquote penetration, right? To orgasm as being like the form of intimacy, right? Compared to just burning that whole thing down the ground and say maybe the most intimate thing I could do is play a board game with someone, or maybe the most intimate thing I could do would be just to do oral and nothing else, right? So these different scripts that we have that are so deep within our unconscious, I'm curious for you what that journey has been like, because for me it's like a never-ending process where I'm just like, wow, cool, another thing behind that curtain, great, over there another thing, cool. It's like a very humbling journey that you go down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have definitely a tendency to escalate,
Sure.
like an
Yeah.
escalator.
Yeah.
Around the same time that I started thinking of myself as polyamorous before I'd heard about relationship anarchy,
Mm-hmm.
it was about the same time that I also realized I was trans,
Sure.
and started kind of moving into transition. And at that point, I just kind of stopped understanding how to interact with people romantically. Like the
Mm-hmm.
script that I'd been able to follow as a guy, um, I started having people sometimes treating me in that way, and I didn't always feel comfortable with it. And then it just got really, really in my head. Because as well, a lot of my women and femme friends would started opening up to me as I started kind of, especially once I started on estrogen, and I just did feel more empathy.
Mm-hmm.
People started opening up to me, and I was like, oh shit, I don't know how to approach people. I don't know how
Sure.
to move towards being intimate with people. So for
Mm-hmm.
years, I barely had any relationships. So
Mm.
polyamory and relationship anarchy were such theoretical, intellectual things in my mind. And it meant that the few little bits and pieces of intimacy that I was finding outside of my kind of strictly platonic friendships,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I hadn't really thought about the complexities of human emotions, and I'd kind of gone into like I was describing myself as relationship anarchist by that time, but I didn't really think about it was just like no rules. That was kind of
Mm.
I was like, well, I'm a relationship anarchist. I've told you this, so me doing this, like you can't get mad at me because I didn't say
Sure,
I
sure,
wasn't
sure,
gonna do
sure.
it.
Sure.
And it meant that a lot of people that I connected with went off of me or things just burned out
Right.
really quickly because I wasn't really giving them that care
Totally. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and having that sensitivity. So for years, that was kind of my experience of it was mainly single. And then when people did show a romantic or sexual interest in me, I would either like hurt them by seeing other people because it was always at the same time. I'd have like nobody for months, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden, two people that I was really into would show up, and
Oh, the
um,
universe.
yeah. But it's almost better that that happened because if there was the times that there was just one person that I met, I was like, "You are the one. Like, let's just
Sure.
merge."
Sure.
Just
I've been there. I know that. I know that for
yeah,
sure. For sure.
because it feels good to kind of like slip into that monogamous fairy tale fantasy a little bit, even if you
Security. Oh my
can kind of
God.
tell that it's not real. And there's all the red flags. You're like,
Right.
it feels so good, and let's just deal with the consequences later.
Yeah, years of social conditioning, right? Slip straight back into that. And it's like, I found the security and it's forever. Oh my God. Like, yes, right? And so I've definitely gone down that path. And once, for me, like building enough stable connections where I'm like, oh, that's not even possible at this point. Like, I have so many good, stable, like so I'm so grateful that that has transitioned and that that's not a slippery slope that I seem to be walking down, but I definitely resonate with that journey. And yeah, so much of that aspect of we didn't agree to this is an important discussion, right? Because there are often so many expectations that are unstated, right? Like that we're going to be together forever, that we are the relationship escalator again, right? The intimacy escalator that, and so a lot of that is assumed, and most people don't have a conversation about it. So it makes sense that we would have this, hey, we didn't agree to this. Now the reality is there's an infinite, unlimited amount of things that we couldn't all possibly define line by line in human
Mhm.
relationships, right? Like, hey, I never agreed to text you back on your birthday. Hey, I never agreed I'd show, like, there's an infinite capacity of things that are almost assumed out of, I think, necessity because of humanness, right? Like, I'm going to assume that you are not going to yell at me. Okay, I'm going to assume that you're not going to hit me, right? And there's no world in which someone could hit me and then be like, hey, well, we didn't make that assumption, right? And so it's like there's that really fine dance between deconstructing the assumptions of culture and then still maintaining genuine care for your community, right? And showing up for them. And so I'm hearing you now as you're like, many years down into your practice, reflecting back and having some wisdom. I'm curious, what would you say to your younger self now with like the consciousness that you do have if you were to paint back to that time in your life?
I think it would be to focus on the friendship.
Mm.
Um, and if it's someone that I wouldn't choose to be friends with,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
don't be intimate with them because
yes.
I don't know, I've tried that and it's never been satisfying.
Hmm.
So I think like if it was after the point where I learned to juggle, my advice
Sure.
would be just like focus on the juggling, like just
Mm.
play with them and
Hmm.
because it's since that has become my priority that so much pressure to escalate relationships with people that I'm attracted to has disappeared. It's obviously lovely when there is those moments when we're looking at each other and we're like, "Hey, you look hot," or "I'm feeling kind of really
Yeah.
affectionate or intimate right now," and then
Yeah.
kind of moving towards each other. But before I realized that it was friendship that I appreciated the most, my priority was getting as close to people as
Mm,
possible. It was like
sure.
I love feeling close to people and I love getting closer, so let's get infinitely
Closer.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
But then my friendships are my closest
Mm,
relationships, and while I'm with partners I've been maybe more physically close to,
yeah.
there's often been more of a distance when I've been sitting cuddling with them watching TV because we couldn't agree on what else we wanted to do, and then
Hmm.
wishing I was out with my friends, but then also kind of being really cozy in the cuddle. And
Yeah.
so yeah, friendships feels like the most important thing for me now, and I
Hmm.
wish it had been for me back then. But
Mm,
at the same time, I'm really glad I've had all the experiences that I have
right.
and that I've made the mistakes that I have. And
Yes.
hopefully I've not hurt anyone too much that they didn't kind of bounce back from it stronger.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you in the nuance of that, those learning lessons, and then also, yeah, taking the accountability and for the care for those people. And so, yeah, I love the raising of relational standards, you know. For me, my standards between someone that I have sex with and that I am connected to platonically are the same. Right? Like the same standards of levels of emotional insight and care and those sorts of pieces, right? And so I love having like why would I be intimate with someone that I couldn't possibly fathom having a friendship with? Unless pick up play and someone's enjoying the play and the one-offness of that, but like trying to build intimate relationships of longevity, it's like, oh, like, I mean, of course I would want to have the same standards across the board for all of those relationships. And so it's felt so nice to have that be consistent. Like it's not like the point isn't about sexuality. It's like about connecting emotionally with other human beings. And so therefore there's the same standards applied across all of those different relationships. And so we're kind of hitting on it here. And I'm going to transition us to the second question, which is, how do you practice relationship anarchy? We're definitely hitting on some of these nitty gritty pieces of it, but for you, how would you describe the way you practice it?
I think one fundamental aspect of how I practice it is attempting to bring complete presence
Mm, yes.
to hanging out with someone. I'm sure I've probably annoyed some people with my lack of messaging sometimes because when I'm with someone, I don't like messaging other people. And when there has been hierarchical relationships that had, there has almost felt like a nagging pressure to
Mm,
reply. And even if I've been
sure.
deliberately been like, no, I'm with this person and I don't like when other people are on their phones,
Right, right, right.
I get so stressed out. But yeah, it would be like a sort of cognitive dissonance of like, I want to reply, but I also don't want to be on my phone at all.
Right.
Um, so yeah, being present with people, but then also within that presence, also having the understanding that nothing exists in a vacuum.
Mm,
Friendships and love and human connection are communal, even if there's only two people there at that moment. Each of them has loads of connections, and
yeah.
it has happened in my life recently where I had someone that was sort of kind of primary partner level of entanglement, just because
Hmm.
neither of us had anything else really going on when we'd gotten together and just
Sure.
got really, really in love because we had loads in common as well.
Sure.
And then both kind of becoming more connected to each other's communities and then starting to feel strong feelings of attraction for each other's friends and our shared friends and loving the idea of that, but then feeling the pain of that, especially when it's like that's my friend that I introduced you to,
Mm,
and like
mm,
you guys are sort of connected, and I'm all alone over here, and then
mm.
knowing how that feels, and then potentially projecting it onto their experience of me connecting with people
Mm,
in that kind of friendship group.
mm-hmm.
But ultimately, like it did end up sort of making the relationship too painful, really, to continue. And at the moment, we're sort of going no contact just because there
Mm,
was a lot of codependency that we'd built up.
sure.
And it was stopping us from following our kind of natural connections in other directions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I have been practicing it. I think I'm hoping that's going to be my final capital R relationship.
Mm,
Because when that sort of when we went on a break, which resulted in a breakup, which
yeah, yeah.
I don't want to think of those words in my,
Reconfiguration. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it had just, yeah, it taken up so much of our well-being, and both of us, like, I think had really been suffering for a few months out of that.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, part of that was having conversations with another friend who's a relationship anarchist and saying like I only want friends now. I don't even want to think of
Yeah,
people as partners or lovers. I want
yeah.
friends that I can hang out with and go on adventures with and practice flow arts with
Mm-hmm.
and sing with. Like I love
Mm-hmm.
singing in harmony
Yeah, it's
with people that
beautiful.
I
Yeah,
love.
the
It is
vibrations. Woo.
oh, one of
Ah!
life's best feelings.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, if when we're facing each other, we want to, we can explore the physical dimension of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But for that for it to be okay for that only to happen once, or if we like it, then we can do it more. But I've had relationships where we've had sex within the first day or two, and had like a friendship as well. But or we would have been friends if we hadn't gotten into that romantic space and sexual space straight away, which then became the default. So then when we would
Mm,
hang out and walk around, instead of just being adventure buddies, we're holding hands and stopping and kissing under trees. And it was sometimes nice, but sometimes it's like, I want to go and like climb on that wall and like jump on rocks. And that's what I'm transitioning out of, is kind of trying to be a relationship anarchist in a codependent relationship. And now
mm,
I'm transitioning into only wanting friends. Um,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because yeah, I want my relationships to be friendships.
Yeah, often more stability in that, right? Because of the intense, complex web of things that happen to us when we have a quote unquote romantic, wherever we draw that line, and sexual connection. It is, within our current context, so excited for the younger generations that are going to benefit from stuff like this and be like, why was it so hard for you? Like, good, good, good. We love that for future younger folks here. But for us, within our current context and the society that we've grown up in, there's so many scripts. There's so much going on of how to do this, right? And so when we have that intense attraction, it is that intense dopamine, right? It is all of those oh my God, it is an intense drug and a half, right? NRE is a
Hmm.
really intense drug. And so then when you pair that with so many cultural scripts that say this is how you do it, escalate, 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 escalate. The highest form of love is close, 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 right? And you're not nurturing all the rest of your relationships. We kind of like fall into this black hole almost. And our concept of self is formed by multiple relationships, whether you fuck multiple people or not. All of us, the concept of self is formed by multiple relationships. And so when we step into that black hole of one singular connection, it places so much stress onto that connection that I don't think is really, one, good for the erotic, just bare minimum. You need some space, but also just for pressure for the connection, right? And so that's true whether you're monogamous, polyamorous, or a relationship anarchist. We all need thriving community of multiple people, and there's often more stability then in those connections because we're not working through so much of the really a whole part of our psyche that we still don't have a lot of language for. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that people were, and we still hear this language of, oh, I was attracted to them, so I couldn't control myself. Oh, I just fell into it and I had to have this. Like, it's this language that we use that's very like animalistic, like we just can't seem to control ourselves around this. So like our whole society is still developing significant insight, communication skill, and navigation of these sorts of emotions. So I hear you. That makes sense. Like friendships are super stable in comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel that that's another part of the label of transcendental anarchism I think
Mm.
of. It is sort of moving past the animal, like not getting rid of the animal because the animal's there,
Right,
and being
right.
able to, yeah, like get into that like kind of
Sure.
feeling when
Exactly.
the context is right, but being able to be based in our humanity and our kind of sense of spirit almost, which in this kind of form of spirit, I'm talking like sense of being part of something bigger than ourselves,
Hmm.
like the kind of overall context. And I think we are animals, but we're evolving into something more than just animals. And I want to be that duality. I want to have the conscious choice, maybe have the energy of the animal, but have an animal with be an animal with free will. Because there's been plenty of people that I've been animalistic attracted to,
Yep.
who being with them made my life not
Woof.
miserable, but just so intense and
Yeah.
uncomfortable, and like brought out all my insecurities, and we ended up just in a really kind of toxic situation.
Sure. Yeah. Some relationships are like clouds. Things are brighter when they leave, right? That might be
Yeah.
shade for someone else, but it's not what I need in my life, right? And as a type A sort of girly myself, like I've definitely found such a joy. I feel like I've unlearned this. I'm gonna knock on wood, right, with some confidence there. But the types of relationships where I feel like they're kind of out of reach or like they're a little bit emotionally unavailable, I'm like, oh, what a project I could get a straight A on. Jesus, like, oh my gosh, if I could look at my younger self, it's like, no, walk away, invest in your creative flow and find some other energy for yourself, right? But like, man, I've walked into that web more than 100 times to just Oof. And so it's a learning process, truly. I see that as a part of like the spiritual practice is increasing that awareness as you go through this and learning and developing more. And then the more that we're able to love ourselves and kind of stay away from these complex webs, the more we can love other people with security and stability. What you're talking about with your friendships, the people that are there for you through rupture and repair and are able to navigate a lot of those complex emotions.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um,
Yeah.
Mind is a little blank.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, and so it's a great time to kind of transition into our next question then, which is why do you practice relationship anarchy? Why is this important to you?
Partially, I have not really managed any other way.
I know, I feel that
Um,
now.
I wasn't good at monogamy when that felt
Yep.
like the only option. But with polyamory, there's such a importance placed on romance and sex, and especially being within poly communities as a poly person, or even like when I was kind of thinking of myself more as relationship anarchist, it is really, it can be really painful to be surrounded by these people that you love who are all hooking up with each other and not really like almost being in the center of the room with everyone just kind of fucking around me. Not
Mm,
quite like that, but that's
sure.
sometimes what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And or I'd be at kind of kink type
Sure.
parties, and I'd end up like in the corner chatting about philosophy with someone, but
Totally.
everyone else is kind of doing scenes with each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I was thinking of myself as polyamorous, it it brought out a lot of insecurities in me. It was like, why don't I have these multiple relationships that
Mm,
everyone else in my community
mm,
has? And it was when I more transitioned to valuing friendship that that's when I started being able to connect with people in that way because I wasn't putting all this extra importance into sex and romance and
right.
just being able to love.
Absolutely. So that frame shift, right? Because I'm sure you had those friends when you were saying, why don't I have multiple relationships, right? And so that frame shift to see that you actually do have
Yeah.
multiple relationships. There's a couple of things I want to do in my career, right? Is one, to end rape culture, and two, to invite the world to reflect on the fact that we all have multiple relationships. I
Hmm.
think we'd be in a very different world if we all had that frame, and hence where people can practice monogamy or polyamory under relationship anarchy when you have that frame that it's that we all have multiple relationships. They are all important. And this brings me back to what you were saying earlier about presence, of how you practice it. I feel like the pleasure of life is found in presence.
Yeah.
Like, whether that's grief and you're really in it and you're there, you're like, there is a specific amount of pleasure in feeling that. I hope people can hear the nuance of that because you're living, right? Or in a
Hmm.
conversation that you're having with someone, there's people who have sex that is less present than a conversation, right? People are in their heads, they're just fucking and not even connecting with that person. And so I think about the power of it being about that presence that you mentioned earlier, and that being the most significant thing that you could really experience with another person. And then knowing that there's so many different ways to do it, whether it's flow arts or that conversation, or like I said, the board game, right? Like when you really feel into that level of presence embodiment, the pleasure is abundant wherever you're at.
Yeah. That's how you get into those transcendental
Right.
ecstatic states.
Right.
Like the difference between like a stroke on the arm when you're in your body and when you're not in your body, it can be worlds apart.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, everything that life has to offer is so much fuller and more vibrant the more
Yeah.
present that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of sort of brings it back around to the spiritual aspect as well, because that is what all of the gurus teach across
Right.
disciplines
Yep.
is presence and
Mm-hmm.
awareness of the now and that time doesn't even really exist potentially.
Sure.
And that this is where all the energy is. It's where life occurs, is on this big stage of now. And if we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly thinking about the past or wondering about the future, then we're missing what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. And so that's a great, I think, transition into the next question, which is, how does relationship anarchy impact your practice of intimacy? I'm already hearing that presence being such a significant piece of that, but how else does relationship anarchy impact intimacy for you?
I think one big part of it was that relationship anarchy allowed me to have kind of physical intimacy with friends. Like it used to be my friends would sit at least a little bit of
Right.
space away and like partners and lovers, we would be cuddling and just
Right.
constantly like
Right.
using each other as furniture. But
I hear that.
and at the start of kind of having more of a poly community, I was spending more time with these people who were very physically affectionate, and I found it so shocking and honestly a little confusing at first because I was like, are they into me? Because like
Mm.
they're touching me lots and it
Mm.
feels really good and we're really close and we're smiling
Yeah.
lots and there's loads of eye contact. It's like,
Yeah.
surely they must like be into me. And then I'd kind of get into some sort of cycle of limerence almost where I
Sure.
would just be like overthinking the connection and then often sort of ruining my experience of those
Yeah.
lovely moments by wondering and then sometimes even like causing problems in those relationships by attempting to escalate when it was just
Mm.
a lovely moment with a friend who was touching my leg
Yeah.
as a way of connecting. So I think bringing away or stripping away the expectations of touch and intimacy and affection
Huge.
really allowed me to be able to get a lot of pleasure from those moments, and a lot of connection from those moments. And being able to find that intimacy in eye contact that lasts just that little bit longer than the your kind of instinct to look away,
Sure.
or really hearing someone or really feeling heard or seen. There's so much intimacy in human interaction, and it can happen at like huge distances as well.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes get it with juggling, where I'll just be juggling at a party, and I didn't feel like anyone was watching, and then like I either do some cool thing that accidentally that I've not done before, or I have a spectacular drop or something lands on my head,
Yeah.
and just that moment of kind of scanning the crowd and seeing that someone's just seen it, and it's like like those moments just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, life has got an infinite number of possible intimate moments that are there to be appreciated if you can strip intimacy away from the romantic relationship escalator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that saying, intimacy is into me, you see, right? It's that moment of
Wow.
juggling, right? Yeah, it's not me. So,
That's
whoa,
that's
yeah, yeah,
good.
totally. It is good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that moment of the juggling being a witness, right? Someone's witnessing you. And I think that's some of the profound aspects of the human experience is to be witnessed by other people. That's essential. We actually lose our mind when we are completely in solitude and not being witnessed by other people, right? We're
Hmm.
relational beings and we all need that. And so it makes sense that with this frame shift, you'd be feeling more of that intimacy with multiple people. And anarchy being about this deconstruction of power systems, right? And so there's so many systems that we live under, and there's so much that is just the water that we swim in. And so there is a level of when you're working through this, pointing the arrow upward to say that, like, wow, this system really impacted me, and taking responsibility for it as we do that. And so when we're talking about touch, right? Many of us have been touch starved, to be clear, right? And then for years and years, social conditioning, again, any sort of touch means the escalator, right? And so it makes sense that under these systems, that would be what we're feeling, that limerence. Oh my God, this is going to go here to here to here to here. We're going to live together, the mortgage, and then we'll die happy. Whoa, whoa, how fast did that go? It went fast, you know? And so it's like some level of pointing the arrow upward, not attacking ourselves because, hey, like it makes sense that based on our systems, that's what we'd be thinking. And also then that accountability, right? We are accountable for our actions and want to change and do better in the future. And so I think what I'm hearing from you say is the more that you do that active deconstruction work for our unconscious, truly, the more joy you find in the abundance of opportunities and intimacy that is in front of you in the here and the now, not the projection out, not the fantasy, but right here and the now, and the intimacy and the connections that are around you.
Yeah. Even from non-human like
Yes,
sources, like either
love my cat.
animals or like I've had it with mountains and stuff
Sure,
before. And like
sure,
I will admit occasionally this has been on various
totally.
psychedelic molecules,
Yep.
but sort
Safe to
of
talk about that in this space.
just, yeah, feeling seen and connected with a hillside or a woodland,
Yeah,
or a body of water. And like, okay, like there was one time I was tripping where I actually like felt a little bit turned on looking
sure.
at this hill. I was on another hill just in front of it with a valley in between, and it just kind of come over it, and I was like, oh, that's a good
Yeah,
hill. And
yeah.
just feeling that excitement that normally would only come from a sort of sexy encounter with a human, and just feeling it within myself. I think
Mm-hmm.
one thing that intimacy kind of teaches is, or being able to get like when you get that intimacy from different sources, is that these nice feelings that we get from intimacy and from love and from being turned on, however you will kind of see what that means,
Yep.
it comes from inside us. Like we create our own neurotransmitters. The oxytocin and the serotonin and the dopamine, they're all generated inside our bodies, and yet other people can trigger them. But to understand that interaction with any, and I do, part of it I think is that I do believe that mountains are conscious and trees are conscious and that the whole of the universe is conscious. So maybe it's a little different for people who do just believe that matter is inert unless it is within a living system.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
trailed off on a bit of a tangent there, and I
I
lost
hear.
my.
I don't think it's a tangent. It's all related. So I'll connect some dots. Yeah, I think that even for the folks who think it is just matter, because I think that would have been my past consciousness, sometimes I get to a certain space where I'm like, damn, my previous self, it depends on where I pick it. Because if I pick like purity culture, Christian self, I'd be praying for me right now and my soul, you know? And then a little bit after that, I'd still be like, damn, who's this woo-woo spiritual chick like talking to me, you know? But it's like, okay, we're here. Something about training in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy definitely did shift things for me. That's true. Because as you were speaking, I wanted to say, like, have you ever felt the wind on your skin?
Yeah.
Folks, like, you know what I mean? Like, whoa, like I'm being touched by nature and its force. Like, okay, you know? And so I think about eroticism. Audre Lorde has this great piece. I believe it's called On the Use of the Erotic. I'll have to link that in the show notes, but great piece. If you just Google Audre Lorde erotic, you'll probably find the piece. And a lot of what she talks about is the ways that the erotic is present when she is out in nature, just as much as when she's having sex with her lesbian lover, right? Like it is about embodiment and it is about presence, right? And so you can feel that with the wind, you can feel that with a partner. And even if you don't believe in the, aliveness of all that, which is funny because like we know from like a very like quantum level that this is force and energy, like everything. I don't sentience we can get into complex conversations about, but no matter what, like these are things that have true energy in them. Okay. See, past self would be like, what is she saying? It's like take a class in physics and come back. you know but yeah, there's just so much grandeur in that, and when you really feel that awe and that scale with the mountain, I think that that can activate a lot of that life force as well, because you're like, wow, I am just a small dot on a small dot and an even bigger small dot, and that can either produce a little bit of existential dread and or at the same time that aliveness of wow, what a crazy world we live in.
uh, yeah, wind. I do love wind.
I love wind
Okay.
too, right? And the sun. Ooh.
I think one of the most intimate, and I hadn't really ever thought of it as intimate until this conversation, but I think one of my most intimate experiences was another psychedelic trip up a hill where I was just sitting at this cliff edge with a friend, and there was one angle that I could have my head
Mm-hmm.
where it sounded like breathing behind
Mm.
my ear, but then I would kind of
Mm.
turn my head and it was disappeared. And it felt like it was like one of those sculptures that when you look at it from one angle, it's something, but then as soon as you move away, then it's just completely like
Sure.
mess. And
Sure.
it felt like that. It was like all of the tiny little sounds of nature with the wind and the bushes rustling and maybe people walking in the distance. It felt like it was nature breathing behind my ear
Mm.
in a really, really like comforting and whole, like I felt so held by nature and I felt
Yeah.
like she
Mm.
could she was perceiving me in those moments as well and could tell that I could hear her breathing. And it was just really, really profound moment of spiritual intimacy with the mystery.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you're talking about the relationships to everything, right? I think that's why when we started this conversation, I'm like, where do you even draw the line of the box of relationship anarchy? Because it's a relationship to wind, a relationship to my cat, a relationship to my lover, a relationship to the earth globally, my Chicago, right, these are all relationships, even relationship to a drug, right? Relationships to psychedelics, coffee, like all these different things. And then also the meaning making that we have. There's so much power in that when we realize that our brains are always making meaning, they're always making stories, and we do have a lot of control over that. Often we can feel like we don't. Sometimes we have those first intrusive thoughts, but we do have the ability as a muscle to quiet the mind, slow the thoughts down, and come back to the body, to the felt sense. Because oh man, I mean, I just went for a run before this recording, and as I'm thinking, like, oh, I've got this podcast, I've got this going on, I got this going on, I'm definitely not feeling the wind in that moment, right? Because my brain is going in all these different spaces. And so it's really important to remember that if you want this level of embodiment, there is a muscle called mindfulness, right? To be aware of all the different thoughts that are going on in the brain, slow them down, and come back to that present moment. And so that's something that will benefit all of your relationships across the board.
And I think for me, another word that I'd like to associate with how I interact
Sure.
is tantra. Like
Mm,
there's obviously there is the stereotype of tantric sex where yeah, when you bring those principles into sex, it can be incredible and it can last ages and it's all just it becomes a full body experience where just tiny little touches are just electric. But thinking of Tantra as a philosophy of yeah, presence with sensation
mm-hmm.
and more than just presence with the sensation, but like active manipulation is not the right word, but moving with the sensations and
Mm-hmm.
breathing into the sensations and making it this dynamic breath of the in breath and the out breath to bring new feelings in and then to sort of keep the energy cycling.
Right.
Um, like I've described friendships as tantric friendships. I describe music that has like lots of build-ups and floaty
Mm-hmm.
bits and that's just
Yeah.
really dynamic. I describe that as tantric music. I think it's such a powerful practice. And I mean, I speak about it as if I actually like practice anything with any sort of discipline. I am highly distractible, and everything I do little bursts of, including meditation and mindfulness and tantric practices.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, viewing the world through that lens, I find leads to a very satisfying and sensational life.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I hear you on the definitely not an expert in tantra in any capacity over here. I've certainly given my lens on relationships and sexuality, and I did a very basic yoga teacher training, and so like have the just very like surface level knowledge. But what I do understand about it is like yeah, the ways that we've really like capitalized and like cultural appropriation to a certain level often of like oh it's about sex, it's about sex, it's about sex, it's about sex. But I appreciate what you were saying about this deeper insight to the practice, that I know it to be more about embracing the divine in all things in life.
Hmm.
So I'm finding the sacred in all things in life, truly the pain and the pleasure, the disgusting and the horror, and the things that truly make your jaw drop, as well as the things that bring you that joy, and finding the divinity in all of that, right? And so hence where often in our very white patriarchal society, sex got this very like negative shame, like so bad, so bad. But Tantra never had that lens on it, right? Because it was like, oh, the sacred is in everything. And so
Hmm.
it makes sense why we would all like capitalize on that specific area of it, but also then that deeper practice to see it as more of abundance of the divine in all things. And so that comes back, like we were saying, to pleasure being really embracing everything that's in the present moment. And so I see that as all deeply connected, but I'll certainly name, I have not practiced it, you know, as like someone devotedly of a lineage or anything. So I think that's important to name too. But it's really connected to a lot of what we're saying about like presence and being with ourselves and other people.
Absolutely. Another big part of it as well for me that really pulls me towards it. And again, I am a student of chaos where I just
Sure.
love all sorts of
Follow your
systems.
passion. Yeah.
But I love that it's about unification of opposites.
Mm,
It's about sort of finding that middle path between the two and walking along that, where if you do translate that into like a sexual or even a relational context, it's about not spiraling off into either direction that it could be, but kind of sort of breathing because you got to keep breathing to not lose yourself in either
yeah.
direction. But the further along you can walk that middle line, like in sex, it's spiraling off into orgasm essentially. Like if
Mm,
you can keep breathing, and it feels like a tightrope in those more visceral kind of practices, the further along you get, just everything builds up the connection to everything, the energy that's flowing into the or flowing through the presence can be really profoundly powerful and healing. Um,
yeah.
and if you can stay on that tightrope and then just stop rather than like finishing,
Sure.
then that energy can just brighten up your whole world and turn it into whatever you want to, like creativity, or flow or healing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it was reminding me about, for me, like my flow practice would be rock climbing, right? And
Hmm.
so there's so much in that practice of having to take real deep breaths because you're very literally doing a practice like flow arts and spinning fire, right? That you could actually be harmed from. And so when you're in that, you have to take those deep breaths. When you are outside on a cliff face and you start to shake, you have to take some deep breaths. And so it reminds me a lot of the ways that I practice expansive relating. Oh my gosh. When you were talking about the community sharing of people loving each other and having to deal with all of those complex emotions, reminds me a lot of trying to climb up a mountain going, I am shaking right now. I actually have, like, if you're in a good community, I have a very safe system where this rope is safe, this community is safe. That's a big determiner, right? If you're climbing with a shitty rope, wow, okay, that's a whole different scene. But when you're in a good community with good people and that rope is secure, and then it's working through the experiences that are going on in your body, it's like, can I take that deep breath and keep going? Can I take that deep breath and keep going? And some of those relationships are clouds, and I had to get some of those out, right? That rope was not secure, and that makes sense, right? And as you start to find more secure people, you can kind of work through a lot of those really complex emotions, right? Often with my therapy clients, it's if you've experienced trauma, and I would say we've all collectively experienced a certain level of trauma around relationships and sexuality in our white Western world. Um, it takes getting into a safe space to start to unpack that because until then you're in survival mode, right? And so when you get into these safer spaces, you're kind of able to push that window of tolerance. You're like, wow, I'm feeling that stretch of my heart. I am scared, but I am safe. And that nuance there, like taking the deep breath through that, life changing. It doesn't hurt as much. It is still scary, but you're not holding that tension in the body anymore.
Yeah, tension is
Life's lessons, it's all around.
yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, I've talked a little bit here about some of the difficulties, even just in that transition. But for you, what are the difficulties you've experienced in relationship anarchy?
I think sometimes like a difference in definition.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
totally.
like I think for a lot of people, if you haven't done any of the prior reading on anarchism and relationship anarchy, then relationship anarchy at like a very surface level can just seem like irresponsible solo polyamory, I guess,
Yeah, sure.
where it's like, and I think a lot of the time people do sort of
Yeah,
use relationship anarchy as an excuse to
totally.
just not really think
Yep,
about other people's feelings.
yep.
Yeah, I've kind of seen that within my communities a bit, that when there has been like communities I find sort of pulse, like there's sometimes like really, really tight knit core and then shit goes down and then it sort of scatters and then some of those people will come back and there's other people coming in and it goes in waves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think one, and it maybe comes from like wishful thinking on my part, but there has been times when I have felt so close to everyone in my kind of immediate community, and it's just felt so utopian.
Mm. Yeah.
And a lot of people in my community do consider themselves relationship anarchists. It's usually been one of the relationship anarchists who maybe hasn't done the reading that ends up acting in a way that fragments the group.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, people that you could hang out with together and have lovely group hangs, it sort of disperses from communal vibes and it becomes like I have that friend that I hang out with on this day and that friend I hang out with that day. And it's obviously important to have one-to-one connections with people as well. But yeah, I think as because it's maybe these people are just kind of doing the same exploring and mistake making and learning that I did when I first kind of came across the
Mm-hmm.
term.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the instability of it all, just kind of feeling like there's a really tight core community where there is that mutual aid and everyone's got each other's back, and yeah, it just feels so utopian. And then
Yeah.
to almost have to grieve the
Yes.
loss of
Oh,
that
yeah.
when just one person acts in a way that hurts someone else, and that person gets mad at someone else that they were getting closer to, but now that person seems like
Yep.
competition rather than their own relationship. And yeah,
Yeah, campaigns. People start campaigns. It reminds me of Dean Spade's recent book, Love in a Fucked Up World. Have you read that one?
no,
Highly recommend. Yes, highly recommend. I would say it's like all the concept of relationship anarchy without that title. And so
okay,
Dean Spade is a relationship anarchist. I have an episode with them from like way back, but their recent book is like all about this sort of thing. They've done a lot of work in movement spaces as an activist. And so talking literally about this of communities, of how do we actually work through conflict and rupture and repair and all of that. And yeah, I hear you when you're saying of how good it can feel when your whole community is together. I wrote the Psychedelic Jealousy Guide that's available on my website, and I talk about the ways that expansive relating feels like a psychedelic trip. And we talk about psychedelics as non-specific amplifiers, right? And so I would say that this expansive relating is going to amplify your attachment. Take that drug and then sit down. You know what I mean? Like, whoa. And that being said, like when we think about a non-specific amplifier, right? When it's good, it's real good. Oh my gosh, I have all these people around me. This is so fun. We all love each other. Whoa. And then something happens and you're like, oh my God, everyone's upset. There's this whole story. Oh my God, you know, because it's all of the people now. And so you're like, oh God. And so I've definitely been there of like so joyful and then feeling like that complete drop when things happen because it's not just one relationship. It's like 6 or 7 or
yeah.
whatever your circle is. And then you're like, okay, this is a lot. I now have 6 relationships I could be stressed out about. Cool. Cool. Okay. Felt really good when we were all happy, but yeah, then so that I hear you in the complexities of that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sums it up perfectly.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So learning the skills for all of us, like all of us are learning those skills and walking each other home in that sense of trying to yeah, go through rupture and repair and what it means, like even when, you know, on the biggest scale, right? Like what is restorative justice, right? Like that's like the big community scale. And then even on our local, smaller scales. And so the personal is the political. The more that we can find out how to do that with better skills within our local community, I think the more that we can then expand outwards to really change these larger systems, you know, and bring more restorative justice and healing into our communities.
Yeah, it's interesting that you compared it to psychedelic
Yep.
experience. It's 100%,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Also, if you combine that with psychedelics,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
you got
like
stories? I've got stories.
yeah, just
Yeah.
trippy relationship anarchists like having ecstatic experiences and then hyper fractalized insecurities. Like, oh.
Yeah, yeah, they talk about MDMA being like, oh yeah, you work on it, you know, for trauma. It's gonna bring all of your trauma responses down. You're gonna feel so secure. That's not the case, right? It's a non-specific amplifier, folks. And so when you take that for your first threesome, oh man, your attachment is gonna be flaring. Hello. Like, so lessons learned in that sense for sure, for sure. And so we'll balance it out, right? Those are some of the difficulties. What are some of the joys that you've experienced?
Cuddle puddles,
Yes.
like sort of non-sexual
Yeah.
cuddle puddles. Ones maybe where there is a little bit of extra energy. Yeah, that's nice too. But I think the safety and loveliness of a cuddle puddle with your best friends is just
Yeah.
so warming for
Mm-hmm.
the heart and soul, and it just yeah fills the body with all of the nice chemicals.
Totally. Yeah, I know. I love that safety in numbers there on a pure evolutionary sense too. And it's so interesting because just thinking about expansive relating and opening our hearts up more, so many people, when they think about the world of polyamory or relationship anarchy, there's always that first response of like, I'm too jealous, I could never, right? It's like, okay, like if you don't want to have sex with another person for the rest of your life, like sure, like let's respect that, honor that, cool. What about your partner being able to snuggle another person? What about your partner being able to hold hands with another person of whatever gender they're attracted to, right? Like, can we like relax just a little bit? You got like, if we want to hold the line with sex, like okay, like I'll hold that with you, but like, damn, like relax. Let them hold hands with people they're attracted to. Let them hug. Like, let them snuggle. Like, what world is this that we live in? Now, if you go back to my previous consciousness, though, I'd be like, absolutely fucking not. I freaked out when my partner wanted to go get coffee with someone of a gender they were attracted to when I was younger, coming from purity culture. So I have some level of like sympathy for that, but also like, damn, younger Nicole, you gotta relax a little, you know?
Yeah, I was very much the same.
Yeah.
Especially when there is that agreement that like you're sort of faithful to someone.
Right.
And then when yeah, especially for me because I didn't really have much touch with friends, it was like all
Yep.
touch was
Yep.
sexual, and for because it was generally women that I was dating, women in general are often a lot more affectionate with
Yep.
friends.
Yep.
And that would feel almost like an imbalance. It's like, well, I'm holding myself back from physically connecting with any of my people, but you're not. And then kind of, yeah, feeling those feelings of jealousy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But then, yeah, learning about comparison was a big shift in things for me as well. That and I think that's probably one of the really difficult to reach sometimes
Oh,
places, but one of the really
sure.
rewarding feelings is when you do feel jealousy that you've been maybe a little attached to, and then feeling that start to melt away, and then being
Mm-hmm.
able to share in that energy and happiness that is someone that you love being
Yeah.
happy with someone else in whatever way.
Absolutely. And I feel like the biggest, there's a lot to unpack with jealousy, of course, in terms of what makes a good trip with expansive relating, right? Again, if your lover, human that you're connecting with, is lying to you, of course, you're going to be jealous and feeling lots of emotions. I think so. It's important not to be like, oh, why? What's wrong with me? I would say, you're in a bad set and setting. That's why the psychedelic trip isn't going so good, my friend. Okay. It's not the drug. It's not expansive relating. It's your set and setting, right? And then also, there are a lot of things to deconstruct in the mindset, right? When you have grown up in dare culture and all of these racialized drug wars, if you're taking the drug and the whole time thinking, wow, the cops are going to come and take me to jail, that's a really difficult psychedelic trip that is a
Yeah.
reflection of the mindset and the culture that we live in, right? And so the same thing can happen with expansive relating, right? It's like what sort of narratives, like we were talking about, the relationship escalator, the intimacy escalator, automatically happening the second I see my partner. For me and my first threesome, it was literally seeing my partner hold hands with another woman, which is like so silly because like watching like PV intercourse didn't do anything to me, but the hand holding, I was like, what is this? You know? And so it was the romance myth and all that stuff that just went poof. And so there's a bit of that nuance to jealousy, right? Like, is it your mindset? Is it the setting? Is it a mix of all of it? And I think it's really important to get into that because it's not like the psychedelic drug is bad in and of itself. It's just these deeper questions about the set and setting. And so I hope more people can get into that nuance because then it makes compersion so much easier. Because if you're beating yourself up of why am I not feeling compersion when your setting is bad? It's like, dude, hold on. You know what I mean? And so I think that's half of the journey too, is getting more curious about these contextual factors.
I think so, yeah. Because the most recent one where I got very entangled with that person, there was a lot of jealousy. At the start, it was mainly me, and then towards the end, it was them
Sure.
feeling more of it. And yeah, it felt like, and it was exactly the set and setting thing. It was the
Yeah.
context was making it painful because at the same time, like when that relationship started up, that's when I was reading Relationship Anarchy. So I
Sure.
was having these experiences that were really not sitting great with me, because it was their first poly relationship and they were just out of a monogamous relationship. So they were looking to explore. When we'd first kind of got together, they described it as like they want to have a slut era. And I was
Mm,
very supportive because I was like, yeah,
sure.
do that. Like
Yeah.
you've not really had a chance to do that yet.
Yeah.
And hadn't ever like read any of the stuff. They didn't know how it might make people feel because again, it was like I encouraged and then because I did, like their reaction to me feeling and kind of I wouldn't speak about and this was maybe a mistake. I wouldn't speak about my jealousy in the moment. I would sort of
Mm,
be quiet and then I would try and work through it and
sure.
sift through my feelings and then I would speak about it after the feeling had kind of
Yeah.
subsided a bit.
Totally.
But yeah, it there was a lot of dissonance between sort of reading all the stuff that I really agreed with of
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it does say in the book, I like, and it was one of the last things I read, and it actually was, it's fine to not dive into completely open relationship anarchy. Like, don't make yourself suffer. Just out of principles.
Yes. Slow
Um,
dose. Slow dose. We don't need 5 grams for first time, right? Like slow dose, handshake, build the safety. And then if you want to go there, go, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I hear you. I'm that type A energy where I'm like, I can do it all. Run. You know, it's like, whoa, hold on. We don't need to be crying at the play party, right? Like, whoa, you know, right? So it is definitely a journey to in the psychedelic community, they'll say move at the speed of trust. What a great continual metaphor for expansive relating. Move at
Yeah.
the speed of trust, right? We don't have to just drop in and then have that situation where you come out going, wow, I need to integrate what the hell that ego death experience was of having all those levers that, you know, and I'm like, hey, I'm here for that. I love working with folks in that integration space. But for all of our nervous system's sake, you know, going a little bit slower with it for sure. And I feel like one of the biggest transformations that I can think about is love and connection is a resource that we all need. That's a non-negotiable. When babies are not held and cared for, they can be fed, but they will die. There's like research from orphanages where they weren't receiving enough touch, and so like you will truly die if you do not receive enough of this as a human being. And so when I think metaphorically, I've kind of talked about it as if your framework is that you only have one relationship, I would argue we all have multiple relationships. But if your framework is that you only have one, and this is where you put all of your resources, and you think about that as like a river, right? And so that river is flowing into you. And then someone comes in and says, hey, well, are you willing to share the water from that river? Fuck no. I'm so thirsty in this society. No one snuggles with me. There's literally only one source of water. Right, okay, hold on. Very different picture when you start to say, wow, I have all these different relationships I can build and all of this. And now I have this abundance of water flowing into me. And naturally, I am not going to be as aggressive to resource hoard, right? It's really interesting. It makes sense that in our society where touch is so deprived, where intimacy is so deprived, unless you are in that dyad, it makes sense that we'd be wickedly jealous because that is a resource that we all need. And so the more that you can expand that, and that doesn't have to even mean fucking, it can mean, like we've been talking about this whole conversation, just intimacy and presence with more people. The more you have that, the easier it gets because you're like, yeah, go. I feel really good. I have all of these sources of love in my life. Like, find yours. It's a
Yep.
different world.
Oh, 100%.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think for me that shift kind of happened probably around the time that I had read about relationship anarchy, and it was an extended kind of dry spell in my life, but where I was getting a lot of limerence for basically whoever my closest friend was at the time, because I
Mm.
would just spend loads of time with them and then just be
Mm-hmm.
like, "You are amazing, I love
Yeah,
you,"
yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
then yeah, wanting more from that. And then I remember one day I was just, I don't know, sitting in work or on the street or something, and I decided to just do an experiment in my mind where I would just look at people and try and imagine what about them would make me fall in love with them. So
Yes.
I'd kind of like look at just this old man or this, yeah, just random people in the streets, and I'd be like, how does it feel to be your lover? Like, not even kind of thinking about sex with them, but just like imagining standing in front of them, looking at them, and feeling love. And it's like, what about your personality or your kind of life really makes me fall in love with you? And it was a really nice kind of moment or exercise to do. But then through that, it just almost became a habit where I
Yeah.
started seeing or looking for, or maybe just seeing, I think possibly starting to look for and then getting into the habit of just seeing things in people that would make me love them,
Yeah.
and that in a different timeline, maybe we do
Mm-hmm.
have this amazing love story where it's just
Yeah.
the two of us that are together forever, or in whatever context. I wasn't really going into many details. It was just like
Sure.
you are inherently lovable by your humanity.
Right.
That was when I kind of started telling people that I just fall in love with all my friends.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
I can't really think of any friends that I don't love in the same way as I love lovers. So it becomes more about deciding kind of moment to moment what you do with the person rather than the expectations that come with these labels. Um,
Yeah.
and I did start just feeling that love for my friends, and that has also caused issues in relationships that I've been in
Mm.
as well, where there has been someone that I've been in a more traditional format of relationship with within the kind of greater context of relationship anarchy. And when I've told them, or when I've tried to sort of speak about my honest experience, is that I do love our friends just as much as I love you in the same way. Like they're different because
Yeah.
you're you and they're them, and there's kind of the unique relationship dynamic of each of it, but the love is the same.
Yeah.
And the level of love, like it
Right.
can ebb and flow a little bit, but it's there's no qualitative difference in the love that I feel for a
Mm.
lover than
Mm-hmm.
that I feel with a friend.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like we were talking about the erotic, finding it in all things, right? And so finding
Hmm.
love in all things, which can be really threatening for us. Again, based on the society that we've grown up in, it's taught us that exclusivity is how we find security. And so when someone says, I love all of my friends like I love you, they go, what the fuck? Well, then how am I special? What? And it's like, it's so funny. I almost want to change the frame of exclusivity, because rather than exclusivity of actions, right, of what we do, it's more exclusivity of the self. Like, there's no one else that is you, you beautiful, lovely human. Like, there is no replace, like, there is no other you. Like, right. And so, yeah, when you start to have that sort of frame and seeing the love in all people, it's like the light in me sees and honors the light in you, right? Like, that's sort of true, like trying to see the beauty and fall in love with all people as a deep spiritual practice. That makes sense. The mind has neuronal pathways, and if you keep walking a path, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And so to start building a new path, you often have to take more like effort to start thinking new ways. But once you do, it's like a muscle. You keep lifting it. And so now your brain has this really deep ingrained pathway that it's walked multiple times of looking for the love, looking for the love, looking for the love. And so I think it's an invitation for all of us in this moment to think about, what does it mean to drop into that for the people that hurt us? Not just the people that show up and are easy and kind and all of that, but genuinely the people that hurt us, which is not to say that we allow the hurt and the harm to continue. There is certainly a level of protecting yourself and all of that. And also, what does it mean to soften and know that the person who's hurting you is hurt within themselves? They've been hurt by the systems, right? All of those sorts of pieces. And so for me, one of my practices is trying to think about that person as a baby. I think if I'm really struggling to see like the love and for them, it's like if I can remember back that this person was once a small little human, that usually can like tap into that for me. But I think it's a really deep practice to start doing that for the people that hurt you as well. Which gets me much closer to the teachings of Jesus. Shit, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm not Christian anymore, but shit.
Yeah, I was literally going to mention Jesus. It's like, that's what Jesus was teaching. Unconditional love. And he probably was in love with all of his friends too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, man. Yeah. It's full circle moments. It's cool. It's cool. Well, I'm curious then, the last question before we transition to the closing is, what do you wish other people knew about relationship anarchy?
I wish people knew that it's not about sex.
Yes.
It can contain sex, but it's about finding what works best for you and your natural ways of doing things, and what works best for your relationships. And that people who are living that sort of fantasy of just the one person being enough, fucking A, like that's great. And it almost would be more romantic for them if they were doing it in the framework of relationship anarchy rather than like just monogamy, because that's the only option that they can think of. And that's what people tell them, because that's what you do when you have that big, massive love.
Absolutely. Yeah. That big difference between compulsory, right? That's how you say that? Yep. Compulsory monogamy versus choosing it, right? And what does it mean to be conscious in that choice? That's a really complex question, right? Because it's like, do you have to have practiced the other to really know, right? I'm not even going to try and get into that, right? Yeah, it's like, nope, I've gone down that conversation, not helpful philosophical conversation. But I think what's important here is that, relationship anarchy is about that deconstruction of the paint by numbers, right? We're taking it away completely, and then giving you that big blank canvas and saying, what do you want to paint with your relationships? Which can be incredibly terrifying, because it's like, where is the escalator? Where am I going? What am I doing? And then when you go to start to paint, you realize all of the unconscious stuff that we've just spent all this time unpacking is there in my paintbrush. Oh my gosh, right? But the more you work through that and start to paint these brush strokes, every single one of us is going to have a different canvas and what that looks like, which is the beauty of it all, right? And so for someone, that might be having sex with one person for their entire life. Beautiful. For another person, it's throwing sex goodbye for the rest of their life, because why do that? And so it's like that full range of capacity. And so when you're really sitting that, like, what a beautiful practice for all people to become more intentional about their ability to create their life consciously. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it sort of ties back into the political anarchism as well. Like that's the one thing that or the one sort of moral argument that I almost have with talking about political anarchy
Hmm.
is believe in yourself. You don't
Mm,
need someone else to tell you how to live. We don't need laws that are enforced by violence for people to act in harmony with themselves and their communities and their environment. And it's often those rules and limitations on the natural way of things or the natural development of things that does cause all the pain and the suffering and the oppression. And maybe it helped us evolutionarily for a while at one point in our history, but we're at a point where we are all connected in so many ways and we are smart and we know ourselves better than we think. And yeah, I want people to believe in their own autonomy.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Anarchy being such a deep practice of trusting that another world is possible and to keep envisioning that and to keep feeling that. And when you see that vision, to like really embody that in the way that you move about through the world, oof. That's how we're gonna get there, right? Is like step by step, conversation by conversation, in all these relationships because the personal is the political. There's so many systems that are outside of our control. Oh my God, wow. And so taking action within that and then also trusting in the ripples of these relationships that you're forming around you is truly political acts when you show up to go through that rupture and repair and that conflict. It's transformative.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, as we come towards the end of our time, I'm going to take a deep breath with you. And then I'll check in and see if there's anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners. Otherwise, I can guide us towards a closing question.
No, just
Cool.
love.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love you, listener. Or if you're still here after all this, like, hey, yeah, very cool, very cool. All right. Well, then the closing question that I ask every person is, what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Mm. Queerness.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think it's probably quite across the board. I think probably a controversial opinion in some spaces, but I think everyone's queer, whatever that means to them. Like no one is normal, no one is typical. Like everyone is beautiful weirdo,
Yeah.
and I think people should lean into that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live in a world where everyone's the same. And
Yeah.
I don't think many people do. It's like the most horrible fascist vision of the future where there's no
Right.
differences between people. And our strength comes from our uniqueness. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Expanding into that to get outside of the boxes of whatever has restricted us, and yeah, it was funny when I did my dissertation on relationship anarchy, it was all queer folks. And so I had to put in my write-up, like, wow, we need some heterosexuals up. We need some cisgendered heterosexuals up in here. When is that the research? It's always the flip. So I was like, yeah, that's I gotta even that one out in future research. So but yeah, I do see relationship anarchy as such a deep practice of queering, right? Queering relationships, queering the expectations, queering intimacy and all of that. And I feel like you did such a great job today, really like opening up to me and all of the listeners who are tuning in to share about your practice and the visions that you have for expansive relating and to invite all of us to step into deeper love today. So I'm really grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for
Yeah.
it's been such a great
Ah,
conversation.
I love that. I love it. It's truly an honor anytime that like a stranger becomes a friend in a space like this and we can spend the time talking about something so meaningful. If you enjoyed today's episode, then leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to get resources and learn more about all the things we talked about on today's episode. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next week.